Hi, Bumblebee. You were here before me. I was just looking something up. Yeah, I just ate supper. I have my coffee, supper coffee. It's probably a bad time to come right around supper time, but I couldn't be on at 4 because my handyman, I had to make a emergency call to him yesterday. My washing machine, my new washing machine is coming on Friday. When I went down there to try to look at where you unhook the hoses for the washing machine, they are so corroded because I have well water full of lime. Sorry. That I could not budge them at all. And they have to be easily accessible to have your washer installed. So I called my new handyman, the one that put the storm cellar doors on. He has to come over anyway to really finish off those storm cellar doors. So he said he would be over on Wednesday and asked me if 4 o'clock would be all right. And I didn't even think of my YouTube video, of course, when I said yes. But it all turned out fine. He came over. It was about 3:45. And then they stayed because I have a running list of things if I ever found a handyman. And I think he's going to be good because when I called him that my washing machine was coming, I mean, he answered right away. He was at another job, but they stopped on their way home to get the some other things I wanted done. And they're going to be back. He's going to be back on Friday when the washing machine man gets here. So he says, I will work on the storm cellar doors, hinges, and, whatever else he has to do. And I'll be here when they deliver your washing machine. So if he has any trouble going down those storm cellar steps, he can help, or he can, sometimes delivery people get funny if it's not your normal delivery place, like inside the door and down nice basement stairs. I don't have that. So he says, I just want to be here in case, he needs any help with this. He says, don't worry, we'll have your washing machine up and running. And he's not going to charge me for that, but I gave him we sat down on my new deck and I gave him a list of things that I would like done during the summer and fall. So he's going to finish the storm cellar doors and maybe Friday get my rototiller to work because I got my my mini clover seed. It came today. I'm probably not going to plant it for another month, maybe. I'm not sure. But he's going to get it running so that he can just sort of just scrape up the top a little bit. I don't want the ground rototilled like in a garden. I just want it roughed up a little bit so I can plant the seeds. I can add a little bit of dirt that I have and then maybe some compost and just scatter the clover seeds around, see what happens. I have to be careful to see that I don't use them all up in one little space because I only have 5 pounds and that 5 pounds cost $80. So I don't want to waste them. Hopefully there's going to be enough sun in this area. They'll do fine in partial shade, so that's what this is. And they do good in bad ground because they, like I said, they draw the nitrogen out of the air and fertilize themselves. So it's not like you can't have them under, they're going to be near those big oak trees, which suck all the nutrients out of the ground. But that shouldn't matter with this. So they say anyway. So Today, I was going to show you the blog that I wrote about my days as a student nurse at the mental institution when we went through our psych training. And my sister isn't here yet, but when I went on my blog and searched under nursing stories, it wasn't there. Other things were there. I remember writing this, okay? And I remember even inserting the pictures and things. It's not there, which is kind of spooky. And so I called my sister. She remembers it being on there too, because she read about it. She even told me some things that were in it. I know it would have been there. So I didn't have a chance to go through my whole blog. It's years of things to see if I might have put it someplace else, but I hardly think I would have. I mean, it would be under my nursing stories. And there's only 2 little things under there. So I have no idea. So I don't have the pictures to show you, but I do have some stories out of my memory, which of course is crap. But we'll see. Maybe if I start talking about it, more things will come to mind. But we went through different trainings when you're nurses training. Mine was a 3-year nurses training school. I went to Fenn College, which is now Cleveland State University. So it was actually an engineering school and a nursing school college when I went there. And then the hospital that we trained at was Huron Road Hospital. It was an old established hospital. In fact, it was the first school of nursing established east of the Mississippi. Has to be east, we're not west. And I forget what year Huron Road was established, but sadly enough, I believe it was being closed as of a few years back, and I don't even know if it's there anymore. It was a beautiful old building too. And we looked at several schools when I was going into nurses training. We thought about I looked at St. Luke's and I forget where else. I didn't want to stay in Erie. I wanted to go out to a college and a school away from home. I wanted to have the experience of having a dorm and, being away from home. So my Aunt Helen, she was a nurse, and her husband, Uncle John, was a surgeon. Not at Huron Road, but they knew the head of Huron Road really well, and she knew that was a really good nursing school. So that's where she said to go and look at. So that's why we went there in the first place. So we went there, and actually the reason that I decided on that hospital to train at was I loved the dormitory. It was across the street from the hospital, and it was an old apartment building. And the they weren't single rooms. They were in suites. Like one suite would be 2 bedrooms and 1 single bedroom, 2 doubles and 1 single, so that there were 5 girls in each suite of rooms. And down these long hallways, there's rooms on each side. And at the very end of the hallway, it was 3 or 4 stories high. 3, I think, 3 stories high. Maybe 4, I don't know. I remember being on the 4th floor, so it might have been 4 floors. At the end of the hallway was a kitchenette, was a little kitchen. And every day they would supply, you'd come back from your day at the hospital or your day at school, and everybody would head for the kitchen. Each floor had their own kitchen. And they supplied coffee and tea and drinks in the refrigerator, and they supplied cereal and little treats. You know, they'd have cookies and things like that. So anything else that you wanted to buy, because there was a stove in there, you could heat things up. That you could buy, and like a can of soup or something you could buy. I don't think they supplied that, but we ate a lot of cereal. I still eat cereal sometimes for supper. Anyway, I loved the dormitory and the whole idea of the suite, and you'd be with 5 girls. And so when my parents took me there to stay, the first, when we were to check in, I met my roommate. Her name was Dolores Haydock. I've lost track of her now, which I'm really sorry about, because I eventually introduced her to her husband, who was from Erie, where I was from. I went to high school with him. And my boyfriend at the time was one of his best friends. And we introduced Dolores to him, and they eventually got married. But long time ago. That was 1960. I graduated from high school in 1960, and that year I was accepted into Huron Road Nursing School, and that's when I started nursing. It was a 3-year program, like I said. So it was a short little walk just across the street into the hospital. Now, this hospital had I think 3, I forget how it was divided up, but you had so much schooling at the college, and then the next month you had your clinic work, where you would actually be working as a student nurse in the hospital. That's how they did it. So while you were working as a nurse, you didn't have your college classes going on. You had some other clinic classes, but you didn't have the college classes. So when I graduated with a registered nursing degree and a associated degree from the college, associate in psychology. So that's the school I went to. Well, I was saying, during the psychiatric, I got this sweater at Goodwill a long time ago, but I never sold it because I love dragonflies. So I've always kept the sweater. Yeah, I like it. So when we had our little month or 6 months or whatever, I forget the time period that you would be in different areas of nursing. Like you'd have an area in maternity, you'd have an area of time in geriatrics, a time in surgical floors, a time in surgery, all different things. But in psychiatry or your psych nursing, we went to 2 separate different hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, they were called back then. Long time ago, when these places were built, they were called insane asylums. So the one that was closest in town, right in Cleveland, it was the Higbees, that had the great big department store. That family, it was their mansion. It was their house at one time. It was a big old mansion in Cleveland, and they had turned it into a hospital. And at first, I think it just had 60 beds, and then I think it went up to 180 beds at one point. I think that's what I read. But it was more, they were locked wards. Each floor was locked. You had keys to get in onto the floors. Some rooms were locked, of course. And some rooms were, they didn't have huge wards, like I'll tell you about at Hawthorne. It was more of a private hospital. So I don't remember anything being more than like 2 beds, like you would see in a hospital nowadays. But we were assigned a patient, and this is after studying, and being taught how to interview psychiatric patients. There's a special way you talk to them and how you question them or let them talk or whatever. It was a lot. I learned it so well that it was hard not to talk to anybody and not use this technique. You never answered questions. You only asked questions. I remember that. But I remember one of my patients, it was a woman. She didn't talk hardly at all. All she did was rock. She just rocked in a rocking chair the whole time. And I would just sit with her because she just didn't feel like talking. And then I was assigned another patient, and this was a man. And I sort of remember he was sort of a slight built man, and he was older. And I found out after I had him for a patient for a couple weeks that he had killed his wife with a hatchet. Now, he had been in there a long time. He was not violent or anything. But, yeah. So we learned how to talk to patients and how to, that's where I saw my first electroshock therapy, which I remember to this day because it was, and that's one of the pictures that I had on my blog. It wasn't me, but it was a picture of student nurses, and they had my cap on. So they must have been from Huron Road, and they were standing around and watching the patient. It was just a still picture, black and white picture of somebody laying on the table with an airway in their mouth. And that was the place where they gave the electroshock therapy. But I remember having that picture, and I remember putting it on. And I just can't for the life of me find this thing that I wrote, and it's very disturbing. I think I left in my announcement at the description, I left the address to my blog. I will put it on here again. Okay, that's the address to my, if you put that in Google, you should get my whole blog. It's huge. My whole life is on there up until I started eBay, and then it sort of stopped because once I got busy with eBay, I didn't sit and write anymore, and I started doing a little bit of YouTube videos, or actually started doing Periscope first and then started YouTubing. But okay, that's about all I remember about Ingleside Hospital. But Hawthorne was another story. I can remember we had to be bused there because it wasn't really close to, it was in the same area of Ohio, but it wasn't right near Cleveland. It wasn't right in Cleveland. But I forget the city it was in, or little town. Anyway, if you look up Hawthorne Insane Asylum or Hawthorne State Hospital, it had many names coming through the years. Hawthorne Insane Asylum was built in 1855. And it had, I forget how many beds. It was huge, huge. I showed you the picture of the building. This was a huge place. Hi, Sue. I was telling him, you do remember that I wrote blogs about the, about in Hawthorne State Hospital, right? Because you said you remembered the pictures and things. I haven't been on there today to hunt more in depth, but I haven't. That day I was hunting, I couldn't find it. I found the other things, but anyway, we rode up on with the bus, this whole bus load of nurses, and looked at this building that looked like a huge, I forget the style of the building, but it was, if you look back at throughout Ohio or through any of the mental hospitals back in that period that were built in the 1800s, they all looked the same. They all had that same architecture. And it actually looked spooky. So we were loaded off the bus and went into this place. And where you go in, of course, is the administration building. And I think that was all redone when we went in there. And we probably had some classes right there too. But then they started taking us around to the wards and the other parts of the hospital. The men and the women were separated. They called them the men's cottages. They were just parts of wings off the main building. There was the big main building, and then there were these wings off the buildings. And one part of the wing was the men's cottage, they called it. And the women were way over here on the other side, called the women's cottage. But this place had, when they were built, they put gymnasiums in there. This one even had a bowling alley. They had big, we would call them recreation rooms now. I don't know what they called them back there, assembly areas. But when we would go into these big open areas, there were a lot of patients just standing around, either sitting in wheelchairs or sitting on chairs that were lined up around the wall, or just ambling around, or standing at the windows. I remember that a lot. There are a lot of patients would just stand at the windows and looking out of the windows. And then they took us to the wards where they slept. The wards were big wards where the beds were iron beds, single iron beds, white iron beds, and they were not 6 feet apart. They were close, one after another, like 3-4 rows of these beds in these big rooms. But I've read that one time there were 1,000 patients in this when they opened Hawthorne, because back in the 1800s, all kinds of people were put into mental hospitals, insane asylums. It wasn't anything like now, where they don't even have, I don't even think they have mental hospitals now, do they? I'm not even sure. But patients are treated outpatient now, I think. There may be some private hospitals. But this was before, in the 1800s, remember, they didn't have any drugs to treat patients with mental problems. The only drugs they had were things like Haldol and probably things before that. All it did was make them sleepy so that they weren't violent. It just put them to sleep. All they did was sleep all the time. It wasn't helping them at all. I don't think it was till the 1960s when we were going there, maybe it's the 50s or 60s, when they started using lithium for manic depression. What do they call it now? Sue, what do they call that? Yeah, well, they weren't. My sister says there must have been a lot of crazy people. They have a huge building. Well, the thing is, they put everybody in there that were a bother to their families. Kids that had mental disabilities, they went right to the mental institution. There were no treatments for Down syndrome, and those people, that's why they didn't live very long. They put these people in mental institutions. Any type of mental disability were put there. Probably people with Asperger's syndrome and what do you call it? The ones that are a little more severe than Asperger's were put in there. I'm sure women with postpartum depression went right to the mental institution. Yeah, unless you were very with it and did everything like everybody else did, your family would put you in the mental institution. My mother's best friend was in a mental institution. I forget the name of it. Sue, do you remember the name of the building, of the hospital Hannah was in? It was someplace in Erie or near Erie. But all she so feared going back there. What she feared was the electroshock therapy, because that's what they had done to her. And I don't know why she was in there in the first place. I think she had a period of depression after her divorce, something like that. I don't know. But anyway, they, like I said, they put what they treated patients with even when I was a nurse was the electroshock therapy. They did have the lithium. It was still early in treating patients with that. They did have, they gave cold baths. They had these big tubs, like bathtubs. They were lined up in a room too. And they would fill them with cold water, and they would have this cold therapy for these patients. It's supposed to calm them down. They had a lot of things to calm patients down, they thought. And they had a lot of treatments that would take their memory away. And that's one of the reasons for shock therapy, was the electroshock therapy. It took part of your memory away for a while. They said so your mind could rest. That was the story. And the other treatment for it was insulin shock therapy. They actually used insulin and put people into insulin shock, which was very dangerous. But yeah, those were the treatments that when I was a nurse, what they were doing. There were, at Hawthorne, there was a wire cage around the nurse's station. It was locked. And if you remember, I don't know if anybody saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But that wire cage that the nurses are in, that was the same type of thing that was in the nurses' station at Hawthorne. I do remember that. There's a lot of movies. There's a lot of movies out about old insane asylums, what they used to call them. My mother used to talk about the movie, and this was a really old one, but I think you can still get it. You can still find it someplace, probably on Netflix. Old movies from the 40s or 30s called The Snake Pit. Had Olivia de Havilland in it, and she just died. She was 104. Yes, that was a big movie that she was in. She was in Gone with the Wind, too. One of my favorite movies. Yeah, Snake Pit. Shutter Island is one I watched a few years back. I think that's about a mental hospital too. There's a lot of them now about haunted mental insane asylums, haunted now, because nobody uses these old buildings anymore. But some of them have not been torn down. They're full of asbestos. That movie Session 9 that I was watching, that I thought for sure was the inside of Hawthorne. That's how similar this whole building is. Even the outside. They were all sort of looked the same. But that was about a team of guys went in to remove asbestos. My son used to do that, not at mental institutions, but his job long time ago. They had to suit up and they removed asbestos. Dangerous job. Okay, besides the what the hospital looked like, we were assigned patients there also. And this place run on its own, okay? It had farming. They grew their own food. You can imagine what a place like this, they couldn't buy food. I mean, they had to grow their own food. So there was farming. There was, they had their own sewage system and own septic system, own everything. Water supply. everything. It was self-contained. Okay. The patient I remember getting the most was one I didn't even get to talk to, because it was a day we were taking all the student nurses to their patients, and their patients all had jobs. Some worked in the cafeteria, some worked in the kitchen, some worked on the cleaning staff, had jobs in this place if they were well enough to work before they got to leave, you know. So I don't know how on the earth they picked this person for me or picked it for anybody, but he was at work. So they bussed me out to where he worked. He worked in the sewage plant. But back then, there were open vats of water and sewage, and then this long path that led in between these big containers of these things. And I took one look at that, and the guy was standing way near the building at the end. And it was probably one of the only times I ever spoke up for myself at that age. I said, no. And my nursing instructor agreed immediately. She says, no, this isn't right for you, or something. I don't know what she said. But yeah, I don't know the patient I got after that, but it's a sewage plant. But that's one of the things I remember. Another thing I remember was in between, there were some buildings that weren't attached. There were the main building, and then there were the wings of the building. And then there were other buildings, I think they were more toward out back. And they were all connected by underground tunnels. The tunnels, I remember, they were light colored and they were tiled in these big, they call them subway tiles now, but they were big tiles like this up the wall. And the tunnel was rounded and they were long. You couldn't see one end from the other end. And I thought, this is like a nightmare here. But we were in groups, so it was okay. But yeah, to get from one building to sometimes to the other, if you didn't want to go outside, you could go outside and go. But I suppose they used the tunnels in inclement weather or in the winter, you know. But I remember that about it. And another big memory of mine was the dance. They took us there one evening. The patients, I don't know if it was once a month, they had a dance for them. And they all assembled, the ones that could, you know, that weren't violent or anything. They all assembled. That's when the girls and the boys got to get together. And they would have a dance, and they would play music. It was just a record player, I think, back then. And they put the music on, and the student nurses were supposed to dance with the patients. So we danced with, it didn't matter, girls or boys, it didn't matter. You just danced. Dance. That was their recreation. I think they had little treats, you know, too. That was their night out. But I remember that. I just told my daughter about that. She laughed hysterically. And she asked me if I ever saw my date again. Oh. She says that's a good little tidbit of information that I didn't know before. I hope she doesn't put it on Facebook now. But those were my memories pretty much of Hawthorne, and I wish I had those pictures that I know I had found and put on my blog that I can't find. Wonder if I can share the screen and just show you I have the blog pulled up to nursing stories, but it's not to that one. I'm going to try here. Okay, this was chapter 1 of a nursing Confessions of an Old Nurse. This was my nursing cap that you would receive. It didn't have the black stripe when you first got it. After your first year, you got a cap, or maybe it was after a few months you got capped. It was in a ceremony. You got your cap. It was a big deal. And I forget what you had to do. Maybe you didn't get the stripe till your 3rd year. I'm not sure. I don't remember anymore. But that is, see, I can't move. Well, if I go on here, maybe I can. Yeah. It says about my capping. There is my pin. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Can't tell. There's my nursing pin that we got when we graduated. I graduated in 1963. And this little card was my card for my dormitory. Or no, this was the student identification card. That was the address, Belmore Avenue. Belmore Hall was our dormitory. And then this is another story. Anybody can read this if they want. There was my graduation picture as a new young nurse. See, I have my pin on right there. It's graduate. Look at those eyebrows. I always had dark eyebrows. Never had to use an eyebrow pencil. Oh, here's my roommate. This is Dolores. This is our dorm room. We had bunk beds. This was our student uniform. We had a dress underneath. It was black and white check. And then the apron, this was all one piece, and it was starched beyond belief. When you'd sit down, you'd fold the back flaps of the apron around so you didn't sit on them and wrinkle them when you'd sit down. Of course, we had white hose and white nursing school, right? Nursing shoes. This is in one of the classes. This is Miss Woodruff. She was one of our instructors. And see, that's all I have. So I have no idea what happened. But if you do go on the blog and you go over to this left-hand side where it says labels, here's all the things that I wrote about. All these. So, yeah, I blogged for a long time. So let me see if I can get back here. So I hope this hasn't been too boring. Yeah, my days in nursing. But I did use my nursing career. So many people go to college nowadays and they never get to use what they went to college for. I suppose in nursing, you don't have a choice. I mean, you can do different types of nursing. You know, I I worked on a surgical floor. I've worked on a medical floor. I worked in pediatrics. And I worked on geriatric floor. And then the ER, the emergency room, which I like the best. My sister worked in maternity. And then she worked as a rehab nurse. Sue. Yeah. So that is about all I have for today. I had a pretty good day today. I've sold like 5 things. And it's because yesterday I spent the day listing just this and that. Some silverware, some jewelry. I'm sure that's why I'm getting sales. I'm just going to list anything I have. I also just ordered Bumblebee. I hope your box is you're sending me a box. I ordered another thread up box because I've been listening to who have I been listening to? Darn it. The one that's with the hippopotamus plush. She says a lot of plush animals. I'm not having very good. I must have spent all my memory on thinking about the nursing because I can't think of names. But anyway, I watched her a bunch today, and she has gotten a few really good thread up denim boxes, jeans. So I ordered the regular miscellaneous box, and then I also ordered a box of denim jeans, any kind of denim. So I have those 2 boxes coming and a box from Bumblebee. And since this is the summer slowdown, they say, it says she had a vlog on today to say this is a good time to get ready for 4th quarter, to buy and list as much as you can and get all your shipping supplies revved up. Make sure you have enough of shipping supplies, because if you wait till the 4th quarter, shipping supplies coming from the Postal Service there's a long wait for them. So if you need any padded flat rates or any boxes of any kind that you use all the time, now is the time to order them before 4th quarter gets here. Not at all. What a storied life. I can hardly imagine how that could affect a young person. Well, yeah, you wonder, but all nurses have to go through that, I guess, if they're going to be a nurse. Yes, thought I have it out on Monday. Oh, but the week's been a little crazy. Being down to 1 car. It's all washed. Just need to press and pack. Oh, good. So I'll be getting some boxes, lots of boxes soon. So I'll have things to list again, because it is easier for me to list clothes, because that's what I'm used to, than to list trinkets and jewelry and this and that. So, although I found some silverware, all kinds of things, and then I found a little spoon, infant spoon, that my sister told me what it was probably from, even who I probably got it from, because it came from a jeweler. I wish I had it in here. I took it out to the kitchen to use for my tea, because I did list it, but I'm going to use it up until if I sell it. It's sterling silver. It's a little infant spoon. It's just 4 inches long. And it comes from Harold T. Jarecki is the name on the back. That's not a type of silver. So I remembered that there was a Jarecki jeweler in Erie. So I called my sister and she says, oh yeah, she thinks that they probably gave those away to new mothers as like an advertisement. And she knows, maybe not giveaway, but maybe you could buy them. And she thinks my Aunt Kitty, because that's something she would gave that to my mother when she had me. So then I didn't know whether to sell it or not. So I put a high price on it. Yes, bipolar. Thank you, Sue. The manic depression and the bipolar. They use lithium. They have other drugs now for it, but that's what they first started. They didn't even call it that though back then, but that's what they call it now. Yeah, I know a few people that I'm sure are bipolar. They don't hospitalize. I think there's more bipolar than people realize. So this little spoon I'm going to keep until if I sell it, I'll sell it. If not, I'll just keep it. Because now that she told me what she thinks it's from, an old aunt of mine, maybe I'll just want to keep it. Then I was hunting for some silver cloths to clean some of this. And I went into my old silver. I have a set of sterling silver, which is not complete because we were given pieces of silver for our birthdays from somebody. Who gave us that? Was it Kitty that gave us that too? Sue? Who gave us North Warren? That's Warren's Hospital is the one that the mental hospital in Erie. Warren, yes. I'm going to look that up now. So I looked in my silverware drawer, and here I had, over the many years of having an antique store in that, I often found in estate sales and that you'd find sterling silver things. So I would put them in this silverware cabinet. So there's all kinds of things in there I could sell that have no meaning to me, really. It's not my silverware. It's other pieces. I have tea strainers. I have all kinds of things, serving pieces, some really pretty things. So I may put those on. I don't know if silver sells anymore. I probably should weigh it and tell how many grams it is because it's probably sold only for the silver value. I do have a gram scale. When I used to sell silver coins back when we had found those that belonged to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, when we cleaned out the house in Florida, we found that huge mint bag full of silver coins. Well, I sold most of them, made a lot of money. That was years ago. So I had bought a scale to weigh, a gram scale, which I had. I just ran across it recently. Now when I try to find it, I probably won't be able to find it, although I think it's right back there, actually. So I think that's it for today. Tomorrow I go to the dentist, the regular dentist, just to have a couple of my bottom teeth fixed. I've lost a little filling, not a whole filling, just enough to make it rough. I chipped something there. Have that fixed, and I think she saw something else. I have to but drilling is involved. Novocaine and drilling. Xylocaine, I guess it is. So, yeah, have to go to the dentist tomorrow. And then Friday, I get my washing machine and the handyman comes back. So, and then I still don't have to think about the bad D-Day until the 21st of August. Anyway, I'm going to close for now, and hope you enjoyed my stories. I wish I could find some more about that, but maybe I'll find some other things. If I start reading my blogs, maybe I'll find other things to talk about, though. So I'm going to close for now, and I will see you on Sunday for sure. Bye.